Marker. And action.
This podcast is being recorded at the Motion Picture Institute, the oldest film school in Michigan, training the next generation of filmmakers today. Check out the website motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour now. All right, and welcome back to the show. Today I have a very, very exciting guest. Matt Busch is an American artist, entertainment illustrator, and independent filmmaker. He's currently a professor of media and communication arts at Macomb Community College. Matt also is an official Star Wars artist licensed by Lucasfilm, who has also hosted the widely popular How to Draw Star Wars series. He did concept art and storyboards for films such as Con Air, Hard Rain, and The Matrix. He also wrote and directed the upcoming sci-fi fantasy trilogy, Aladdin 3477. So, without further ado, let's talk motion picture. Matt, I appreciate you being here, sir.
Thank you. It's great being here. I love the Motion Picture Institute is awesome, and everything about this school is just amazing. And the podcast is cool. I've checked it out, and so I'm honored to be here.
You're officially in the double digits, so welcome to the club.
Awesome.
Look, I want to start off with how you got this wonderful opportunity to be a licensed artist for Lucasfilm. How does that come about?
Gosh, it's kind of a long story, but so I'll try to give the brief version of it. But I was living in Los Angeles. I found out that this publishing company called West End Games, they did the Star Wars role-playing game, but they also had this book called the Star Wars Adventure Journal, and they were looking for published writers. Now, my game was like art. I wanted to do art, but also I was interested in storytelling and writing. And I wanted to submit like a story idea, but I wasn't really a published writer. Well, I did my own kind of independent comic books back here in Michigan, and they were just like drawings on typing paper. I didn't know anything about making comics, but I would Xerox copy the comics and I'd staple them together. I would hand deliver them to like 15 of the local comic book stores in the area. So I kind of considered that self-publishing, kind of not really lying on my resume, but just kind of, selling it as best I could. So I sent in my resume. Somehow I got permission to submit a story for the Star Wars Adventure Journal. So I contacted them again and I said, hey, because these stories would have artwork with them. It was like this book that had really cool art. And I asked, hey, can I do the artwork for the story that I'm submitting? And they said, no, listen, we have a team of official Lucasfilm artists that do this. They said, so no, that's not going to fly. But if you want to do some like loose sketches, if your story's approved, the artist can kind of look at what you're thinking and they may or may not, kind of use what you kind of put together. So I said, okay, so I did the best story that I could, the best artwork that I could, sent it in. They got back with me pretty quickly. And unfortunately, they were not interested in my story at all. But they said, "Listen, your artwork is actually pretty good.
It's spectacular.
If something comes up, we'll give you a call." So I figured, that's very sweet that they said that. I'll probably never hear from them again. But hey, that was cool. It turned out the very next day, I got a phone call, and they said, "Listen, we need 5 small black and white illustrations. We need them tomorrow.
Wow.
Can you hook us up?" And I was like, absolutely. So I, got a giant industrial size Slurpee, a bag of combos and all the sugar. I stayed up all night. Yeah, I stayed up all night and did the best job that I could. And everything just kind of spiderwebbed from there. And that was 30 years ago. This is my 30th anniversary of doing official Star Wars art.
And I'm going to put some of your art over my face right here. Guys, look at this. Look at not my face. Look at the marvelous work. Matt, when you sent me over some of your art, like I was telling you earlier, I'd seen it before. I've seen it probably in the peripheral in like a bookstore or online, looking at like on Pinterest. It's phenomenal. So I completely understand why they looked at your art and they were like, we need to put this guy somewhere.
Well, and this is also 30 years ago, so I wasn't as good back then. And you learn mostly through experience. So even though I had schooling and everything else, just the sheer amount of experience over the last 30 years. I look at the stuff that I did 30 years ago and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so bad.
Okay, this is a cool topic then. Quick question for you.
Yeah.
What in your experience having worked for such a big company, for such a big IP, what's like a challenge that no one would expect for that kind of gig?
A challenge for me now, because Lucasfilm was a much smaller company back then. So now, obviously, they're owned by Disney. Now there's a lot more challenges. There's a lot more loopholes that things go through. And I'll give you an example of a challenge that I had 2 years ago. There was a project that I was submitting for. I had an idea. I wasn't sure if it was going to fly or not. It ended up working out. But I submitted it, and the person that I was in contact with, I had never met before. And when I submitted the project, they responded. They said, listen, this looks really cool. It sounds really great. We only work with official Star Wars artists, so we can't do this. And it was like, I've been doing official Star Wars art for 30 years now. And they were like, oh, sorry. So part of what's a bummer now is the people that I used to work with when I got started, we all grew up with Star Wars. So we were all like huge Star Wars fans. We're now, because everything's a lot bigger, it's a lot more corporate, I'm working with more and more people who are professionals, but aren't necessarily Star Wars fans. So that's a buzzkill sometimes, when you're passionate about something and you're working with people that it's just their job, and don't really have the fire.
So that's interesting. So when the IP moved to Lucasfilm, of course, Lucas was very good at one thing, and that was cultivating a culture. That culture has somewhat dissipated in your experience.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I'm not one of those people that bags on Disney. I think there's some really cool things that Disney has done with Star Wars, but it's a much bigger company, and it's just a much more corporate atmosphere for sure.
It's also a bigger universe. They've added a lot to it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's interesting to see something like that, and that's where creatives come in and their ideas get bought, and then what happens with them? What happens to an idea when the person who came up with it is no longer attached? What is the idea? And that's what I think Disney is currently struggling with that. I think that's a fair assessment for them right now, is they kind of have to find out what is Star Wars without George Lucas.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a journey for them. I don't think they're going to figure it out soon. I think it's going to be something they're going to have to develop with time.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping they figure it out, because if there's any company with the resources to do Star Wars to the way fans have dreamt it to be, it's the Disney Corporation.
I would agree with that for sure. Sure.
So I want to seg this way into, you said something on one of our phone calls that I really resonated with, and I told you it resonated with me. And that is because you're an artist, and I went to art school.
Yeah.
You chose art as a means of creative expression, because film felt so unattainable.
Yes.
And I did a very similar thing. My whole idea was I was going to be a comic book artist because I couldn't make movies. It felt like, that's a way sophisticated gig to get into.
Yeah.
And then I realized I needed no one else's permission but my own. And it seems like we've had a very similar experience there. I'd love to know what the genesis of that was for you when you realized your art was kind of like getting you closer to getting behind a camera.
Sure. Well, growing up as a kid, I would draw my own comic books. I was really into that. I was more into movies than I was comics, but as a kid, I didn't have a movie camera or anything like that. But I did have pencils and paper. So naturally, I would draw my own comic books. And it's neat when you go back and look at the things that I did as a kid, even though they were in the format of comic books with the word balloons and everything, I could see the way that I was doing action. I was definitely, even though I didn't know what framing heights were, I didn't know what an establishing shot was, or I didn't know, like over the shoulder shot or anything like that. That was exactly what I was doing. So I was really like kind of blocking for movies more so. And they do that in comic books anyway, but this was definitely more movie kind of inspired, the stuff that I was doing as a kid. When I was in junior high school, my parents got a VHS video camera. So I started making my own ninja movies with friends and stuff. But we didn't have an edit machine or anything. So literally it was just whatever you filmed in the camera, hit pause, you would set up the next scene. And then if someone fumbled their lines, then it would have a blooper right in the middle of the movie and you had to film everything in order.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then when I was in high school, finally, I was in like a TV program where we had actual edit machines, and that blew my mind. The ability to film stuff not in order, but then to change the order later, like that was just like the coolest thing. Well, then when it came time to going to college, this is right before the whole digital revolution happened. So film school was actually as or more expensive than medical school. So there's no way I would have been able to afford it, but I could afford, pencils and paper. So I went to art school. That was my thing. And then it wasn't until, things really became digital that I started realizing, my gosh, I could, and I wasn't even thinking movies yet, but I started doing like the You Can Draw Star Wars series for StarWars.com. And everything just became so much more attainable. And so I always thought my own sci-fi trilogy, which I know we'll get to later, but I always thought that would be something that I would create and someone else would make this. But as time went on, the idea just simmered, like, why wouldn't I just do this myself, And so that was kind of my journey. It's just funny, this is who you are when you're little and this is where you want to be. Like, this is the quickest way to get there. But I think there's so many times, like you're saying, that we just that's how we get there is.
My mother has this great quote where she says, everything in life is a preparation for the next.
Yeah.
And I think your life is a perfect example of that. Because especially where you are right now, it's very much linear and it looks simple, but there's so much lore packed into it. You've done a lot.
Yeah.
And what I loved about when I spoke to you is I could feel like you were just like an artist. You were a true artist. And that's kind of led you into some wonderful success. And you're very talented.
Thank you.
And seeing what you ended up doing, I have a lot of questions. I want to get to Aladdin 34 to 77.
Yeah.
But before that, I myself, as an artist, I used that as kind of like a launching point to make my film stick out among, what I was seeing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was because I could storyboard, and that's just because I could draw. And it's similar like what you just said.
Yeah.
My drawings never felt quite like drawings. I was like, man, I'm trying to do something here. I'm trying to get like a story into this piece of paper, and like, I'm trying to frame it in a certain way.
Yeah.
As a storyboard artist, do you have like any tips or any kind of like experiences you'd like to share with us?
You know what? I can't stress enough the power of storyboards, even if you can't draw. Steven Spielberg, for example, he storyboarded every single shot of Raiders of the Lost Ark. He is a horrible artist. When you look at the drawings, they are hilarious. They're essentially stick figures and smiley faces. No, he'll be the first to tell you how bad they are, but they're still. So when you compare his scribbled drawings to the movie, he knew exactly what he wanted, and you can see what they are. You can see the expressions on people's faces, and he just had everything blocked out. And having even those scribbles to be able to show your crew, because if you don't have storyboards, as a director, you're just like, you're explaining and you're doing this with your hands, and everyone's watching and like they're kind of shaking their head, but like when you say it's like this and like that, do you mean from your point of view, or that is when you said this, is this the horses riding, or is this how people hold the reins? Like what does this even mean? Right. Mm-hmm. But when you have a drawing that is, this is the frame, and this is, even if they're stick figure horses, anyone can look at that and say, okay, got it. And then the lighting department, they know what they need to do. The actors, know what they need to do. And it saves time, it saves energy. It's a little more work up front for whoever's doing the storyboards, but it's just it's the ultimate checklist, for getting your project together. I just can't recommend it enough. Even if you can't draw, super, super helpful.
And so with your experience, because like I said earlier in the introduction, you've done some storyboards for some crazy films.
Yeah.
For a film like The Matrix,
yeah,
that's one of those films that was storyboarded from the get.
Yeah.
Like, how much work did you do on The Matrix?
I'll be honest, I worked for only a week on The Matrix, but that was 5 very long days. And it was funny because I actually didn't think The Matrix was going to be that good. I had an opportunity to read the script, and I think part of it is my agent at the time. He hand selected me to work on it because he knew I had already been working on Star Wars projects, and he said, "This is going to be Star Wars for the next generation." So when I read the script,
Smart agent.
I don't know why. Well, I was a lot younger and more naive at the time. So I read the script, and I was probably waiting for, like, where's the robots and where's the, the damsel in distress and where's the villain that, like, has a weird breathing apparatus. And there was like none of that. And it was just, it was just so weird. You have to imagine the story of the Matrix without seeing it. There's things like Neo leaps off a building, and when he falls to the bottom, he stretches through the concrete and bounces back up. I was reading this stuff going, this is so dumb. Like, no one's going to like this. This is like the cheesiest thing ever. Well, the funny thing was when I was working on The Matrix, it was actually supposed to be Tom Cruise.
Whoa.
And then
I know Will Smith was considered.
And Will Smith.
I didn't know Tom Cruise was
It was
considered.
Will Smith after that. So a funny thing happened. Well, Tom Cruise, the reason it was only a week, Tom Cruise left to work on Eyes Wide Shut. And I was thinking, thank goodness, this is like the dumbest movie. So, like, at least with Tom Cruise, he brings his A game to everything. Even back then, I was like, it has to be at least a little bit good, with Tom in it. So it was about 6 months later, and I got a call from my agent again. He said, hey, The Matrix is back on. This time, though, it's Keanu Reeves. And at the time, Keanu Reeves was just like, kind of not that.
He was a surfer bro.
He was a surfer bro for sure. And there was another sci-fi movie that had just come out that was called Johnny Mnemonic. Horrible, horrible movie with Keanu. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be awful. And my agent said, well, it's 9 months worth of work if you want it. So I said, give me a day to think about it. I really needed to soul search because it was sci-fi, and I was working on other projects that weren't that cool, but I didn't want to be stuck on this for 9 months. So, and then miss other opportunities that were coming around. So, true story, I had another agent call me later that afternoon and said, hey, have a new movie. We'd love to have you work on it. It's called The Devil's Own. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more about it. And they said, well, it stars Harrison Ford and Brad Pitt. I was like, oh my gosh, say no more. I'm in. Lock me in for that. So I called back the other agent and I said, I'm not doing The Matrix anymore. So I went to work on this movie called The Devil's Own. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Devil's Own.
I'm not familiar.
It's horrible. And I don't know if you've ever seen this movie called The Matrix. It's amazing.
I've seen The Matrix.
The lesson there, though, it was such a good lesson for me because everyone that I was working with for the brief time that I worked on The Matrix, all of the other artists, they were really excited about it. And I remember thinking, like, did you guys read the script? And they did. Like, what do you guys see that I don't see? Like, it sounds really dumb to me. So the thing was, I guess the lesson that I hadn't learned is when I read the script, I just had blinders on, and and my agent probably shouldn't have said it's going to be that, because that just said a thing that I thought it was going to be like Star Wars. But the real juice for any job that you go to work on, bring your A game and try to find what's amazing about it to make it fun, to make it exciting. And if it doesn't seem like it's that cool, as a creative, that's your job to find what's cool about it. Like, what can you bring to the table to make it cool? And I was a lot younger back then, but it was a huge lesson for me that I should have had different colored, glasses on when going through the project, because obviously it was amazing.
I love that perspective. I think that's a great perspective.
Yeah.
Because that was my next question was going to be, what advice do you have for up and coming storyboard artists, people who want to break into it?
Yeah. Any opportunity you get is it's what you put into this business is what you get out of it. Mm-hmm. So I could give a lot of other examples, but another example would be your first gig might be storyboarding a television commercial, and you might go in like, oh, I can't wait to work on movies and exciting action and stuff. Your first gig might be doing storyboards for a television commercial for toilet paper. And so when you get the gig, you might be like, oh my gosh, toilet paper. Wow, boy, this is going to be fun. But the attitude you should have is like, okay, I know it's toilet paper, but what if we do something so funny, not too weird, because it's toilet paper, but what if we come up with an idea that will be like, oh my gosh, this is like Super Bowl commercial worthy. And dude, let's do something amazing. Like that's the attitude you want to take. Anything that has your name on it, like if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well,
And so I guess what's your thought then to the introduction of AI into the storyboard space?
Boy, that's a whole new can of worms.
Yeah, because I love your perspective, and like every opportunity is one worth fighting for. Make the most of it. Find what's special about it, because that's your voice, and that's what's going to be valuable in the end. That's your commodity. But now we live in a time where AI doesn't have like opinions.
Yeah,
AI will do anything.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people, I believe, like there is storyboarding AI currently out there, and more being developed. I'm more positive.
Yeah.
So someone who's been in that field, I would love to hear your thoughts, opinions, unfiltered if possible.
Yeah. So the thing for AI is that most artists are like violently against it, and they're they just feel like it doesn't have soul to it and everything else. I'm old enough to remember this conversation has happened already many times throughout my career. In the late 80s, the big thing was sampling. How could you take part of someone else's music and then put it into your own music and pretend like it's yours? Today, sampling is like, it's a well-respected art form.
It's the standard.
Oh, yeah. Then in the 90s, the big thing was digital art. And you had artists saying how you can't just have a program like Photoshop. You can't just select a color and then drop it in and it just fills everything perfectly. You can't do that. You have to mix your own color. You have to see the swirl of how the colors mixed. Only that is like true art or whatever. And now we laugh at that. And we know that digital art is amazing. And there's some really cool things that you can do with it, obviously. So now the latest thing is AI, which is kind of weird because we've all been using AI for almost 2 decades now. Anyone who's ever used Photoshop has already been using all of the filters. Those are all AI. Everyone's already been using it. It's just now it just seems like there's leaps and bounds, and obviously generative AI and everything. My take on it, it's not something I'm thrilled about, but it's not going away. And so just like digital art and just like sampling, you can try to fight it as long as you want. It's not going anywhere. If you can't beat it, join it and try to find, if you really want to excel with where things are going, try to find what you can do. I don't know about necessarily incorporating it, but you have to be at the top of your game. And if you can't offer anything better than AI or other people using AI, it's sink or swim.
I so 100% agree with you. I'm glad I could speak to an artist about this.
Yeah, there aren't many artists that'll say what I'm saying. I'm just trying to be real about it.
I mean, I like to be logistical.
Yeah.
I like to weigh caution as much as I can. And with the inventation of this new technology, my complete reaction was, how can I use it?
Yeah.
And I think that's what most people are thinking.
Yeah.
But then there's people who are very much on the other side of, how will this be used against me?
Yeah.
I'm a very positive person. I like to be. So
Me too.
I'm like, okay, how can we utilize this? Because it's technology and we can use it. I don't think it's going to get rid of storyboard artists. I think it's going to, like you say, it's going to aid them. There's going to be a purpose for it. There's going to be good ways of using it, and there'll be bad ways. And I am a big proponent of the human soul. I think that's the ultimate creative force in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't believe that you can give a computer a script and get a storyboard that'll be as nuanced or as in-depth or as valuable as if it came from an actual artist.
Yeah.
I do think it's a great starting point, though.
Yeah.
Because also, let's be honest, I don't know about you, but storyboarding can be tedious at sometimes.
Yeah.
You're getting through a couple pages and you're like, oh my goodness, this really is just back and forth, back and forth. And so it's in my experience.
Well, so far with storyboarding in particular, I think storyboard artists are probably safer at the moment, safer from AI than almost anything else. And the thing about, you know, static art with people just hired to create a single illustration, AI can spit out, you know, 200 different things, and then you can just choose which one is best. The thing about storyboarding, though, storyboarding is all about continuity from shot to shot to shot. So I've had students, for example, that have tried to use AI to do their projects, but the problem is from storyboard to storyboard to storyboard, someone will have long hair and then it's short hair, and then they're in a desert, and then the next shot, the desert's blue for some reason. Like what? Like what? And so when you're going through the boards trying to figure everything out, you're too busy noticing all the differences than what storyboards normally are for. It's not about the artwork. And that's why it doesn't matter if you're Steven Spielberg who can't draw. The point is communication. What are we trying to do here? And if the quality is amazing, but yet it looks like it's a different actor in each thing, then it's too confusing. Like, what are we trying to do here? You start looking at all the imperfections, you know, the things that don't make sense, as opposed to how we're framing the shot and what kind of lighting we want. It will probably get there, but I think that's something that's a little bit further away.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I want to get to the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So you embarked on a crazy journey.
Yeah.
You made a sci-fi trilogy.
Yes.
How, when, why? Like, I got to know it all.
Yeah.
How does Aladdin 3477 find its way into our zeitgeist?
So when I was growing up, there was a lot of things I wanted to do. I wanted to, you know, illustrate comics and everything else, but I really wanted to have something that was my own property, my own characters, my own movies, toys based on the movies. So I kind of joke with people that my goal was never to just work for George Lucas. I wanted to become George Lucas. And when I say that, not the business mogul, you know, with 7 companies and always wears plaid and stuff, but I wanted to have my own, you know, sci-fi, huge, crazy, you know, adventure. So when I was in college, I started putting together, and at the time I thought, you know, I probably won't be able to make these movies myself. So I started illustrating a graphic novel of this story. I got about halfway through it, and then there was a magazine called Fan Magazine where I got hired to illustrate a full-page Aladdin piece based on the Aladdin movie. And I realized as I'm illustrating Aladdin, oh my gosh, my story it's not just like Aladdin, but like there were some components in it that were Aladdin-like. There was no genie, there was no wishes or anything like that. But it was enough, and I don't know that anyone else would have noticed it, but it was enough that it was driving me crazy because I wanted to have a story that was like nothing else. What I know now that I didn't know then is there's no such thing as a truly original story. And a lot of people say there's only one story. If you believe in Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, it's just, you know, there's your character or characters go through obstacles and there's like a whole story arc there. And it's just good storytelling. But you can literally take Avatar, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. You can stack them on top of each other and you'll see commonalities with the story and how they're like, man, they're kind of the same story. And then you could throw in, you know, anything else. I don't know, Jack Black, Shallow Hal. And that's the same thing too,
It's a great
right?
movie, by the way.
It is a great
niche
movie.
reference, great movie.
Yeah, I don't know why did that pop into my head? I have no idea. But good storytelling is good storytelling for a reason. So anyway, I tried changing characters and changing things up, but it didn't have the same feel to it. So over time, it did occur to me that Aladdin is public domain. Anyone can make an Aladdin movie. And I didn't really want to do it, but just over time, I started to think about it, just for fun, like what would if I had to add a genie, like what would I do? Because I didn't want to do, there's no way anyone's going to be able to do better than Robin Williams or Will Smith, who also did a great job. And just slowly over time, I started to think, man, if I had like, instead of a genie, what if it's a djinn? And what if instead of like, slapstick funny, what if it's like the gin of wisdom? And what if it's more profound, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi, kind of character to Aladdin? And just over time, that slowly became more interesting than the story that I had before. And so that became Aladdin. The big thing that I fought, and I remember talking about this on the phone, was the last thing I wanted to do was, there was movies coming out at the time like Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters, and I think there's like Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter and stuff.
Yeah.
So the last thing I wanted to do was like Aladdin in space, something cheesy like that. So so I fought it for a long time, but then that it just ended up being that was the most interesting thing to do. So that was it. Also, from when I was a kid, I remember, and this comes back to like things not being attainable. I remember even like in high school thinking about my future and like, what am I going to do? How am I going to show the world my creativity and like what I have to offer? And I always had this idea, what if I just set out to make like a movie or an animated project or something? And what if I just had the patience to just put my all into it? And it wouldn't be a weekend. It wouldn't be just a summer. It might take me a year. It might take me a number of years. But what if I just put my all, no compromises, and just made something so amazing that takes off and that becomes, the thing? And so that was part of the genesis of what became Aladdin 3477, was just my magnum opus, and to show the world what I got.
So, dude, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
You shot 3 of these things back to back.
Yes.
How? Like, how did this come up? How did you get a crew?
Yeah.
How did you? Because I mean, as far as I understand, the
Yeah.
most film experience you had, besides being like an artist and a
Yeah.
storyboard artist, was like the films you made as a kid.
Well,
How did you get into indie filmmaking?
great question. So, I started making like art videos, but I was never interested in just like a camera over my shoulder and like boring, like watch me draw. So I made 22 episodes of You Can Draw Star Wars, and that ended up being, even though I did study film at Art Center, experience is always the best thing. So making those 22 episodes, each episode has a different flavor. So one episode I dress up like Bob Ross, with the happy little trees and stuff, but it's painting Star Wars instead. There's a couple episodes where it's like the Indiana Jones episodes, and I had the 501st Legion of Stormtroopers come out and they're chasing me through the woods and everything. And there's even an episode that takes place. We filmed it in Japan. I do the whole thing in Japanese, and we just had so much fun making those. But the cool thing about it, because each episode had a different flavor, it was like the ultimate film school, because there was a new challenge each time. And I had complete freedom from Lucasfilm to kind of do what I wanted. And I wanted to grow. I wanted to learn. I kept challenging myself to kind of do different things. I also created my first indie feature. Was such a great learning experience. It's straight to DVD. It's kind of a supernatural thriller. It's called Conjure. And it was out at the time. It was in video stores, Blockbuster, all that stuff back in the day. And the funny thing about it is I was really creative with it. I filmed it with a $300 Sony Handycam, and half of it was filmed in my own home. Half of it was filmed in Los Angeles. I had a friend who, it was actually my manager, who lived in literally a castle in North Hollywood, California. Later, Kat Von D ended up living there, and she moved out a couple years ago. But so I had access to this castle in North Hollywood, so we filmed some of it there. Anyway, I was really creative with it, but nothing was mic'd. The lighting was never professional. Literally, this $300 Handycam. So technically, it's like, quality-wise, it's like the crappiest movie you ever saw. But if you can get through it, there's some really creative things that I did that still to this day I'm really proud of, like kind of how the story works, and some of the cheesy special effects are kind of neat. It was all a learning thing, right? the biggest thing that I learned was the reviews when this came out. And there were some people that really appreciated it for, for what it was. And in fact, I think here at the Motion Picture Institute, they used to show it to their classes, not because it was so good, but Kurt and Doug, I think, could appreciate what I did with next to nothing. And creative wise, it was pretty neat what I did. So anyway, some of the reviews were so bad, and my favorite one was, "This movie is so bad it made my eyeballs scab over from watching it," which was great. But
thank God there was no letterbox back then.
well, here's the cool thing that I learned this, and like we were saying earlier, everything's a lesson, right? So the thing I learned with this, for some reason, I thought when this movie came out, I thought there would be like a flashing screen above the movie that says this film was made for just like, if you thought Kevin Smith, for $27,000 making Clerks, this movie was made for just $300. Look how cool it is for $300. I thought like everyone would see that and then appreciate like what I did. But the reality is no one cares. That actually came out on video the same time as Peter Jackson's King Kong. And so when people go to a video store, when they're choosing videos to watch, like it has to deliver. It has to be worth, the price to rent my film was the same as King Kong. So when they get my crappy film that like doesn't have good lighting, doesn't have good, you literally can hear the sound of the mini DV tape inside the camcorder. A lot of people just like right away, they like, as soon as they saw the quality, just like, what, I had to pay for this, to rent this. Are you kidding me? And so that was the lesson. So, so moving into Aladdin 3477 and leading up to that, my quality started getting better. My sound started getting better. And then, working with Rick Veers, who was in charge of sound, there couldn't be someone better,
Shout out to Rick Veers.
Shout out to Rick Veers. And, he was very instrumental in getting a solid crew together.
I think he literally wrote the book on how to get the best recording of sound.
Yeah.
I have to put that in like the bio or something.
Sure.
Yeah, he's an instructor here at the Motion Picture Institute for anyone listening.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So I guess my next question then is, you work with these crew members in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
You made these films.
Yeah.
I think that the first trailer dropped about a year ago. It got 2.1 million views.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels, oh my gosh. You know what? I'll tell you why it feels so good. I mean, obviously it feels great, right? But during the time that I was making this, and I spent about 5 years in pre-production, traveling the world, doing research, storyboards, concept art, building little spaceships, maquettes and stuff. 5 years of filming, almost to the day. And during this time, like, first of all, when I came up with this idea, when I finally told everyone, my family, my friends, my colleagues, I'm going to make this thing called Aladdin 3477. It's going to be amazing. Not a single person was like, yeah, you should. That's amazing. Everyone thought I was out of my mind, or just like was not in. I had friends that I'd tell, like, so do you want to help? And they'd be like, dude, I don't know. I don't like sand movies, or whatever. And so it was a struggle. But and then during filming, I didn't want to show too much too soon. But every now and then I would show, like, here's one of the costumes, or here's a look at, not the full set, because I didn't want to show too much too soon, but I would show just a little glimpse of something. And it was crazy on socials. I could do a scribble of Boba Fett on a napkin, throw it on Instagram, and I can get hundreds of likes within minutes. But if I showed anything for Aladdin 3477, it was like cricket, 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 cricket. Like, no one cared. No one, I mean, it was, and I knew, and the people working on it, they could see how cool things were looking and stuff. But I'm so glad that I kind of waited until we did the Kickstarter and I released that first trailer, because that really was like this awesome splash that when people saw it, they were just like, what? Oh my gosh. Like, and I don't think I would have had that splash had I been showing everyone all along. So I think sometimes, kind of marketing that way and kind of saving those punches for when they're important. I can't wait for people to see more, and when the next trailer comes out is even better, and everything.
Well, that's my next question is, do you have a release schedule?
I don't. At the moment, we are signed with a distributor. I can't even say the name of the distributor yet.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that was a whole process trying to get that to go through and try to get the movie scene and everything. Was a huge undertaking. But the film, I just turned in all of the key art last week, actually. For all the streamers and DVD and Blu-ray and all that stuff. It's going through quality control next. Right now we're doing, oh my gosh, closed captions and the subtitles and everything. And it's
that's what I like. This is what
so
this
much
podcast
work.
is about.
Oh
Talking
my
about the
gosh.
little nits and grits of the film business.
Yeah.
Yes. Just so you know, guys, closed captioning your film is so hard.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that's really tough for Aladdin 3477. It's mostly in English, but it takes place in Asia. It's like a globe-trotting adventure, 1,500 years in the future. So there are times where characters or sometimes robots will speak in another language. And part of it is things where characters can understand what people are saying, even if they're saying it in another language. Well, part of it, people don't know what characters are saying, but I want the audience to know what they're saying. But that becomes really difficult with something like subtitles, because in another country, if they have all subtitles anyway, what happens as soon as something is in another language? Then you have dubbing, and that becomes complicated, because if this gets dubbed in French, for example, which it is, what happens when there's a new actor replacing the dialogue, the English dialogue in French? What happens now? They're speaking in Hindi. What are they going to do then? Right? But so we're just getting into all that now. And it's so funny, because at the time I wrote the script, I wasn't thinking that this would be a complication. I was just thinking, this is so creative. This is going to make for such a good story. People are going to love knowing what they're saying, even though Aladdin has no idea what they're, you know what I mean? Like, I just thought it was the greatest thing. But now that technically I'm going through it, I'm just kind of like, gosh, I wish I just kept it simple,
That's interesting. No,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the films.
Awesome.
I'm glad to hear they had distribution.
Yeah.
And, I like towards like the end of this, I like to give the spotlight, essentially. If there's anything you want to talk about, I mean, I know that right now this is pretty much your main thing.
Yeah.
But if there's like a thing you want to prioritize or advertise or talk about that's coming up, you want people like navigate towards, by all means, please share it with us.
Gosh, I guess I'll just say, kind of in summary, you caught me on a really cool year, because this year, personally, I just got married.
Congratulations.
So that's really fun. Baby on the way. And it was planned. But this September, I'm going to have a son, which is just like mind-blowing to me. So I'm so excited about that. But professionally this year, it's my 30th anniversary as a Star Wars illustrator. So there's actually a show in Germany, this art show. And we were laughing about this on the phone, that it's in the Louvre. It's not actually in the Louvre, but it's in
the German Louvre.
It's in the German Louvre, because it's this giant glass pyramid. But and they're going to have 101 drawings and paintings of mine from Star Wars projects on display. They're framing them, all of them, for me and stuff like that. And they're flying me and my wife out, and it's going to be a hoot. So that's happening next month. And there's some other Star Wars projects that are going to be coming out this year. And the very first Aladdin 3477 film should be out this year. Might even be this fall. I'm not,
Is that an official announcement?
Well, I don't know yet, because it has to go through quality control, and then the marketing team comes up with a plan.
Temporary official announcement.
I'm assuming it's going to be before the end of the year, and then there is a 2-month plan of how they roll the marketing out leading up until the film. but I just don't know yet when that is or how that is or what's going on. But I can say this, here's something that hasn't been announced yet. I haven't known what was going on for DVD or Blu-ray. Are they both going to be there, or are they going to be connected into one collection? They're not going to be in the same case, but there is going to be DVD, there is going to be Blu-ray, and there are 12 bonus features on the Blu-ray, and I think they're going to be on the DVD too, which I'm real excited about. I wasn't sure I'd get to have those, but there's loads and loads of content. So I'm excited about that.
Matt Busch, just having spoken to you for this time, you have all these wonderful things. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Amazing achievements, and personally, no one more deserving.
Oh, well, thank you.
I appreciate your generosity with your time. It was really cool to get to talk to you.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming by. We do encourage friends of the show.
Yeah.
So I look forward to touching base with you down the line, especially after we get Aladdin 3477 and seeing what impact that has.
I would love to come back and I've got ideas. I'd love to have you come out to the home studio and check it out if you guys want to do
we'll do a tour.
A tour and stuff.
That'd be
could
amazing.
do that. Yeah.
Matt, it was a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that was the Talk Motion Picture. This podcast is brought to you by Motion Picture Institute, a film school located in Troy, Michigan. If you'd like to know more about our extensive one-year filmmaking program, please check out the website at motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour today.